everybody. Welcome to Friday. I hope everybody had a great holidays, New Year's, and what have you. We're back doing our show live here and really excited about today's show. What we try to do here is help people get a better financial understanding and maybe be able to improve their retirement, at least in that particular area. And so this is question and answer, so you can send in your questions at any point in time. Send them to email is one option, so ask Tom at talkmoneywithtom.com. You can put them into the chat. We'll try to answer those live. You can send these emails during the week, and we'll try to get ready for them and answer for them. And obviously, we do cover things that came up during strategy sessions with our clients. So we believe very strongly that the more you know about asset management and retirement planning and money and tax planning, the better chance you have of having a successful retirement. And whether you're already retired or looking forward to retirement, those are three subject areas to learn about. It's not something we get a lot of exposure to in school. So we created this channel. You can subscribe to this channel. We have over 1,000 videos on here now. You hit the subscribe button, the little bell button, to get notified when something new is posted on the channel. Encourage you to kind of go in there and take a look at what we've created so far. Hopefully that can help you also. And then, of course, if you're interested in just kind of one-on-one consultation, answer your specific questions for you personally, you can go to our website. There's a link here on the channel also. And up in the corner is a book appointment button. Set up a 30-minute time with Ethan and I to, just discuss, your situation. We can do it on a video or phone or what have you too. So really excited. Have some questions that came in. Haven't been on the air for a couple of weeks here because of the holidays. So we have some things that, we've prepared for here. But please send in questions. We'd love to try to answer them live here also. Look forward to that. All right. So I want to start off the show as usual with a summary of kind of what I saw happening with the markets. And really, Ethan and I will kind of have a discussion about it. We'll talk about, what we see happening as far as that goes. So here is the S&P 500 really since the beginning of last year, right? So that was the peak on the 4th of January. We hit the highest point of the S&P 500 ever. And of course, we've had this rolling downward market that you see there. At the lowest point on October 13th, we were down 28% on the S&P 500. We basically at that point retraced half of the gain we made from the bottom of 2020 to the top, which is represented here. And we can see that little line right there coming down and touching that. And so I'll put it in a different mode so you can see it even better. So that's a 50% retracement. Created a nice jump upward there. Actually, if you look at today's bar, big green bar, pretty fantastic actually. So up over 2% as we speak right now during the show. I have put a little channel in there so you can kind of see we're in that kind of 3,800 range on the S&P 500. And until you break out of that channel, a lot of this is kind of noise as far as that goes. But really good day today, and we'll talk about why that is as far as that goes. But overall, we're in a down market, as you can see by that kind of red trend line. And what we're really hoping for is some breakthrough here to kind of get us out of this and get us back into a primary trend, that's going upward. All right, so let's take a look at kind of what's going on here. So first of all, I presented this at the last show a couple weeks ago. I just want to present it again because it's really kind of important to understand. This is the SPDR S&P 500 ETF. The ticker symbol's SPY. This is going back to 2010, really kind of near the bottom for the last big downturn. And so the blue line that you see there that's running through there is called a regression line, and it looks at each point and it tries to find a line that finds the middle of those points. And so the key thing to that is, you can't see this very well, but it's a 14-degree slope. So that's the slope we were on prior to the pandemic. And then you see this big drop, right? And that obviously was the pandemic drop when we shut everything down. The government came out and shoveled a bunch of money in front of everybody to try to stimulate things and keep the economies from going into depression. That worked, but it created a massive run-up. And so there's a orange line that runs through that run-up. from the bottom of 2020 to the top that just happened last year. Now that's at a 54-degree angle.
Yeah, way
Right.
too steep for a normal market.
Yeah, that's not sustainable. And so the thing is that the reason I'm showing this is because I've been having a lot of conversations with clients about how much money they've lost because they're locked into that top point, which makes sense. I get it. But it's another way to look at this is say, look, without the pandemic, we're probably still somewhere around that original blue line, and that's where we're heading to, it seems. And I think the biggest irony is that without the pandemic, we end up with a situation where we've got, even less money than we have now, if we look at that blue line, and a situation where we don't have a, big bubble. And we're probably still happier.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have this big run up. We don't look at that as money lost. And, but it's difficult to capture. So altogether, we're just pushing the air out of this bubble. I mean, that's the main thing. And when I'm looking at charts and I look at, like a company like Apple coming down, through all kinds of technical indicators, we're just pushing the air out of the bubble where things got kind of overpriced, right? And now they're starting to come back down. And so a couple of key things I want to cover that happened this week that I thought were important. First of all was James Bullard, right? He's the Federal Reserve President for the St. Louis region. He is the most aggressive so far in interviews about talking about raising rates. When everybody was talking about a quarter point or a half point, he was talking about doing 1 point, 1% raise. They never did that. But this week, he talked about the fact that because money supply is starting to come down, and this is money supply going back, since 2020, and you can see it slowly starting to deteriorate there. This is the total amount of money that's essentially sloshing around in our economy. And he says because money supply is starting to retreat, that should be potentially enough of a deterrent for growth that they're probably not going to have to do a lot more rate increases. So this is the guy who was on the other side, right? And so the market responded, I think, fairly positively to that. And I had another client that asked me a question about the Federal Reserve balance sheet.
Yeah.
And so if you look in that shaded area here at the beginning of that chart, there's a big jump in money supply. And that's the money that was pushed out to keep us from depression. And if you look at the Federal Reserve balance sheet, you can see where that money came from. They started to purchase treasuries, mortgage bonds, and what have you. And you notice that they're selling that off now, right? So that started to decrease at the same time that money supply has decreased. So it's the Federal Reserve pulling money out of the market by allowing some of these bonds to mature, right? And some of them they're selling off. Originally it was 47 plus billion that they were doing, and then by September they got up to 95 billion between treasuries and mortgage bonds, right, that they're selling off. It's been a little bit opaque as to what they're actually doing, whether they're on that schedule exactly. Has been asked questions about it for the Federal Reserve Chairman Powell a few times, but he's basically, hey, we're just responding to the market. It's a guideline, this 95 billion, kind of depends on what they have coming due. They look at what's happening in, say, the mortgage market and how much they're affecting the mortgage market, those kind of things. So, but it is coming down. One thing that's important to understand about that money supply chart that we just showed, I'll go back to that because this is really interesting. If we get to April and money supply is still down, it'll be the first 1 year decrease in money supply going back to 1950.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy stat.
It is. It's now part of that's because we had this huge jump in money supply, right? So it makes some sense to have some decrease because we had sort of an artificial increase because of the Federal Reserve, because of the pandemic. So, we're still in this world of dealing with the pandemic, even though we might be going out to eat and doing different things. The world, at least economically, is still dealing with this, and so it's still something to consider as far as that goes. So I think that was an important component here. It's just, what is going on with money supply. Federal Reserve chairman who's very aggressive on raising rates is talking about, hey, we might be, able to do a lot slower rate increases. These are really good things for the market. Well, today the market just took off,
Yep.
and we're having a huge jump. It has to do with the jobs report that came out today. And this particular jobs report has something for everybody. I mean, if you are worried about inflation, well, it's got something for you. If you're worried about recession, there's something in here for you also. So if you're worried about recession, well, 223 jobs were created, 223,000 jobs were created in December. The expectation was 200,000. So strong labor market. If you're worried about inflation, well, look at the labor market is slowly but surely actually decreasing in total number of jobs. And so that takes some pressure off of price in theory. And so that's a good thing. We also saw unemployment drop from 3.7, and it was expected to be at 3.7 again, dropped to 3.5. So you've got a scenario where unemployment's coming down and wage growth is starting to slow down. And so if you're worried about inflation, this is a really big deal to you.
Yep.
Right? If you're worried about recession, this is also a big deal to you because it means the Federal Reserve can potentially raise rates less going forward. And we actually saw the projection for total terminal rate drop today quite a bit based on this information. So still got a lot of jobs created, but the wage growth is slowing down. And we have some decrease in total number of jobs, which is good. So it's kind of the perfect mixture of a report, and that's why the market's up a couple percent today too.
Yeah, the market's looking for that kind of Goldilocks scenario where it's, everything's just right. It's not too cold, it's not too hot, and we're kind of going for that softer landing.
Yeah, and of course, most people don't believe it's even possible. And I hope we can get back someday and look at this and say, wow, they did it, or we did it, or so, there was enough good things going on in the economy, enough jobs being created, enough spending from consumers to offset all the other pieces. Well, supply started to catch up, and that brought inflation down by itself. And yes, we got interest rates back up higher, but things start to settle in, and man, you could really have a big market move. I mean, like today, like we're seeing, once they got inflation under control in the late 70s and early 80s, 1982 was kind of the first full year where it was under control. It was a fantastic year, over 100% gain in 1982. So, that's the silver lining to this, is we can maybe get to a spot where this is all done. Yeah, we might have a recession. Seems like all the indicators are showing we will. But it doesn't mean how steep of a recession that will be, right? And that's really important as far as that goes. So just to get back real quickly to what's happening with the market and what we're looking for going forward. So we're in this range, kind of 3,800 range. Like to see it break out of that. We're getting right up to the top of that right now. We do have to be a little bit careful of putting too much emphasis on what's happening today. For example, at the end of last year, I did video after video talking about the fact that these large pension funds and large, target date funds were rebalancing. And the market came down. If you look at the end of the third quarter, same thing happened. So you had to be really careful to say, oh, the market's falling apart. It was a temporary situation that was happening. And right now, one of the things that's driving this is going to be short covering, because a lot of people, the majority of people and big money managers feel like the market's going to go lower. And unfortunately, when that happens, you get a lot of people that are shorting the market. And once the market starts going the other way, and we get a surprise report like this that came out better than expected, so we get short covering. So it's not legitimate buying per se. It's people trying to save themselves from losing money. But you can start a lot of good rallies that way. So hopefully, we break through this 3,900 range. And then more importantly, we get through that red line.
Yeah, if we break that red line, then you can see the market really fly.
Yeah, and it probably would be some reason that that's happening, and some, I would suspect, because we're heading into the core portion of earnings season now, that if there was a catalyst, is that earnings are better than expected. And, right now the expectation is that earnings could be soft because of the, poor market conditions caused by the higher inflation and, higher cost as people pay more for labor and those types of things. and then that the CEOs might be saying things negative about what's happening in the future. Forward guidance is probably a really big deal here. So if those turn out to be better than expected, we could see, that might be the catalyst that gets us through this. Again, because that would be unexpected. The short interest would still be there to a large degree. People would be covering shorts right through that line. And all of a sudden you got a bunch of other people jumping in thinking, okay, the market's taking off. So that would be great. On the opposite side, falling below that 3,800 range would be, important. Getting back down to that 50% retracement at around 3,500 would be another, bad sign. And so, these are the things we're watching for right now. But anyway, that's what's going on altogether with the markets as far as, I'm concerned for this week. It's an exciting day, actually. I'm really happy with what's happening so far. A lot of the data is coming out pretty decent. It's more of an expectation for what might happen in a recession and how bad that can be to earnings. That's really kind of going to make or break this situation as far as that goes. But things are improving in the inflationary front, which really does help. All right. Well, what's our first question?
So what was in Secure Act 2.0?
Secure Act 2.0. Okay, so just to reiterate kind of how that came about. Originally, the original Secure Act 2.0, I guess it was about the middle of the year last year, passed the House, like 415 to 5.
Yeah, strong bipartisan support.
That's crazy. We don't see anything like that ever. And so this was a redo of some of the, lots of pieces, but a lot of them had to do with what was going on in retirement plans. And it was very popular. And then it got into the Senate and sat there for a long time, for maybe half a year. And so what happened once they did this big
spending bill.
budget spending bill, they attached this to it, and it got through finally. And so let me share my screen. I'll show you some of the pieces that are happening here. There's a lot more than we're going to talk about. It's pretty amazing.
Lot of different things.
There is. I'm going to try to hit on the things that might affect you, in your situation, knowing my clients and what they're looking at. So first of all, there was changes to the required minimum distribution. And that's a continuing trend. And I actually predicted this maybe 20 years ago. I talked about the fact that when companies went from pensions to 401ks, right? So pension, you get your monthly income, nothing really changes. And then they said, okay, we're not going to do pension anymore, but we'll match you on your 401k. And so huge 401ks, $1 million, $5 million. And I said, hey, when people start to get, at that time, 70 and a half, they're going to start to complain because it's going to be huge amounts of withdrawal, taxable income that a lot of people don't need. I mean, it's a good problem to have. That's a first world problem, that's for sure. But they then changed it to 72, right? So that helped. So at least you can leave it in there for longer. Well, now it changes to 73. So if you are in 2023, if you're 72 or younger, you do not have to take a distribution.
I think if you turn 72 in 2023 is
Yeah.
how they work.
Yeah.
So if you turned it 20 or 72 last year, you still have the RMD
Yeah.
from last year. But this year, if you turn 72, you don't have the RMD.
Yeah, exactly. So I was meeting with a client who was 70, and I was telling her, she won't have to take her requirement distribution until 73 now. Used to be 70 and a half, then they moved it to 72, now it's 73. And actually, for you younger folks out there, it's going to go to 75
Yep, in
in
2030.
2033, which is so far off, it's kind of hard to talk about this 10 years from now. But that will still be significant. It'll come. And so, if you're a 40 or 50-year-old looking towards retirement, you can now look towards 75 as the age that you have to start taking money out of retirement plans. That makes a difference. So the next big thing that's happening is just if you have a Roth 401k and your employer gives you a match, right?
So for this one, it's the RMDs actually.
Oh, sorry, it's the RMD one. Sorry, that's next. So if you have a Roth 401k and you get, in this case, past 73, normally with a Roth IRA, you do not have to take any money out for required minimum distributions. But if it's listed as a 401k
or a 403B, you have to take
anything
these RMDs.
really outside all these, they're kind of employer plans, right? then you do have to take a distribution, which is kind of a shame, because although it's not taxable, because it's a tax-free distribution from a Roth, it is getting rid of an asset that can grow tax-free, which is exactly the opposite of what you want. You want to leave that stuff for as long as possible. But now they've matched it up with the IRAs so that you don't have to take a distribution out of your 401k if you still happen to have one past age 73. We just ran into one of these last year where we had a distribution that had to be done, and it was, kind of sad. Better off rolling that into an IRA in the past just to avoid that, but now you don't need to.
Yeah, it simplifies it for people.
Yeah. Okay, so penalty for missed RMD is reduced. I've never seen anybody pay this, but it's still important, and maybe there's a reason why they haven't paid it, because the penalty prior to this Secure Act 2.0 was 50%.
Yeah.
So if you had to take out $20,000 and you didn't, you ended up with a $10,000 penalty. Yeah, big penalty. So that's probably why we've never seen it. Yeah, I'm sure it's happened, but now it's 25%. And if you correct it within 2 years, it's 10%. That's still a lot. I mean, we got clients taking out $100,000 RMDs and more, so that could be a massive penalty. So you don't want to miss that. You want to make sure that you're distributing your money that you have to by the end of the year.
I wonder, though, with this lower 10%, if you correct it within 2 years, if people will start to abuse it, because the market could move, more than 10%.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, because that's a good point. Because at 50%, nobody's going to abuse that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there wasn't even a 2-year window. It was nothing, 50, period. And so, yeah, you kind of have to wonder now, okay, if I'm making 10% a year, if I think I could, and, I might have to pay a 10% penalty, would it be better off leaving it for that 2 years? I wouldn't recommend it, only because what you're doing is you're investing in an unknown environment that you think you might do something, but it might not work out. But the guarantee is you're going to have to pay 10. I hate those bets, right? Where you have a guaranteed loss on one side and an unknown gain on the other. I'm not a big fan of that personally. Okay, so so this is increased the catch-up contribution limit. So if you're over age 50.
Yep.
You are allowed to put more money into your 401k. They call it catch-up contribution right now. And now they're starting in 2025 if you're over age 60.
Yeah, so it's 60 to 63, which is a really weird.
Yeah, they give you this, I think that's probably 4 years. They give you this little 4-year window to do even more. And so that's a good thing. I mean, it does allow for a higher, amount of money to go in. It's a write-off if you do a regular 401k. It's tax-free growth if it's a Roth. And, a lot of people do save a lot right at the end. Matter of fact, that's where I think I saw a stat once where from 55 to 65, people save half of their retirement, savings in that time frame. And so, obviously you're better off doing that when you're 20 to 25. You'd really have some money, but, we don't have that much when we're that age oftentimes. So, but as you get older here, you could actually put more money into your 401k. It doesn't start till 25 for the new piece, but nonetheless. Now, this is what I was talking about before. So, if you have a Roth 401k and your company is matching, and right now, prior to this change, they would have to put that into a traditional IRA. So let's say you put everything, like I have everything in a Roth 401k personally. And so if I had a company, I am the company, so it doesn't help me, but if I had a company that was matching my contributions, they'd have to put it into a regular IRA, 401k, sorry. And so then it grows tax deferred. That's obviously I'm trying to not do that. I want to have tax-free, income and
avoid the
retirement.
taxes.
Yeah. And so now they're allowing that 401k match to go into the Roth. That's actually a really big deal.
Yeah.
It's
It's like our
amazing.
start for this year, so
Right.
there's going to be some adjustments.
Right.
Most of these things start in either 2024 or 2025.
Right.
And so there's going to be some stipulations like, yes, on that match, you're going to have to pay taxes on it. Then
Yes.
it goes into your Roth.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of kind of fine details that are still going to be worked out over the next year.
Exactly. And so, anyway, but it gives you one more option, one more way of doing things. Maybe you don't do it every year. Maybe you do it towards the end. There's all kinds of things that you might do. But I like that. Matter of fact, this Secure Act 2.0, I like.
Yeah, I do too.
It really is pretty good. It's one of the best things I've seen. Maybe that's why it passed. This isn't exactly the bill that got past the House, but it was this flavor, and maybe that's why it did so well, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have this automatic enrollment. Now, this is this is a really cool concept, and some of the details are still going to be fuzzy, I bet, until we really figure this out. But the idea is, you go to work for a company, they're going to sign you up automatically for a 401k, and they're going to have 3% of your money coming out of your check going into that 401k. Now, maybe they have a match or not or whatever. They don't have to. But what it's doing is it's forcing American workers to save. Now, there is an opt-out.
Yeah, 90 days, you can unwind all that, but
Yeah.
otherwise you're opt-in.
That's right. So, but at least it makes, I'll bet you anything, this works really well. I bet you a lot of people don't opt out. It's weird. They didn't sign up for it in the first place, but when they're forced to sign up for it, they don't opt out. And all of a sudden, you're going to have massive, this is a great thing for the stock market, because where's it going? It's going to the stock market. So it goes 3%, and then every year it goes up 1%.
Until you hit that 10%
Until you get
cap.
to 10%. And, to have a really successful retirement, you probably need to get into that kind of 15 to 25% range
Yeah.
anyway. But so many people don't save anything. I remember one stat, I don't know if this is still current, but, the average 65-year-old here in America had $49,000 plus Social Security in their retirement, right? So that's a problem, and that might be somewhat helped by this automatic enrollment. This is a big deal.
Yeah, I think this also matches with people's kind of like standard psychology. It takes effort to opt out, and so we'll take the easier option, which is just opting in or just staying in.
Yep.
Actually, signing up for a plan takes effort. That's why a lot of people don't do it at times.
Yeah, exactly. So this will be automatic 3%. This is good for everybody. This takes pressure off of Social Security, which could, have real problems going forward if we continue to live longer. This takes pressure off of the government in general for supporting retirees. This puts money into the stock market on a regular basis across the board. This is a big deal. I really like that component of it. There's a whole bunch of details and size of company and all kinds of things, which we won't bore you with, but nonetheless, that's a big piece of it. I think it's probably the most exciting part of the whole thing. I just had a question for somebody. I think they were dealing with their father's estate that had passed away, and they weren't sure where the money was, right? And isn't there some place we can go and find, the assets for my father? Because I'm not sure, especially nowadays when a lot of people aren't getting statements in the paper, so you can't hunt through the drawers, that going into an email, which sometimes you don't even have access to because your father didn't give you the password. And so they have this database for finding these old retirement plans, and I think that's really nice. I'm not sure how it'll work, but
it's going to take 2 years, and it's going to be implemented by the Department of Labor.
Yeah.
So it's going to take some time for them to build out the infrastructure to actually support this. But it'll be nice because a lot of times, as we go through different jobs, we might miss a 401k here or there, and to go and find that is kind of important. It's free money in a sense.
Oh, yeah. I've had several instances throughout my career where people found money that they had put away someplace at a company or an IRA that they didn't remember that they did, and then they found it later. So you wonder how much isn't found. Yeah, I mean, so this would help. And then last is just this Roth rollover for a 529 plan. And there's a lot of criteria here, and that's lots of requirements is is a big one. But one of the complaints I hear about a 529 is, hey, I have a young child. I have no idea. Are they going to college? Not going to college? Where are they going to go? Are they going to have a scholarship? How expensive is college? And so I'm putting money in this 529 that can only be used for college expenses. And although I can move it to a different child, or it can kind of redirect, which is nice. I'm afraid of over contributing to this and ending up with all this money in a 529 that doesn't get used for college for a variety of reasons. And so now they're allowing, and you can fill them in on some of the requirements. You're more familiar with
Yeah, so
but they're allowing a Roth, rolling some of that into a Roth.
yeah, so you have a lifetime of $35,000 that you can roll from a 529 plan into your Roth accounts, but you can only do like the 6,000 or I guess the current contribution. I don't know if they bumped it for this year, but it was 6,000, and so you could hit that cap after a few years. But these 529 plans have to be older, so they have to be open for at least 15 years. So they have to be essentially older plans that have not been used. And then you also have to change the beneficiary to your Roth account. And so there's a lot of little requirements that have to be done to actually make it so you can do this.
Yeah, no, the big advantage is that a 529 grows tax-free as long as the money withdrawn is for approved expenses, college-type expenses. And that money would move into a Roth IRA in this particular account that would also grow tax-free. There's some big advantages with a Roth IRA versus a 529 for your money. It's not a lot of money in this case, but nonetheless, because you can invest in anything in a Roth, you can move it around and do whatever you'd like with it. 529s, you have to go through a state. They tend to be more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
There's restrictives in terms of what options you have, and you can only make changes every 6 months. So if you get your kid through college and there's some money left over and you can meet these requirements, then there might be some hope for that money to move out into a Roth and be there for you for your retirement.
Yep.
Right? So pretty nice, actually. It's a pretty cool bill altogether. I'm pretty excited about it. All right, so what do we have next?
Can you explain the relationship between bond prices and interest rates?
Oh, okay. We have a chart for that. This comes up quite often, actually, because it gets kind of confusing. So the first teeter-totter there, you can see when the interest rates goes down, right, the price of the bond goes up. So this is a good example. In 2020, we had a pandemic. The world shuts down. Airline flights drop by 96%, and all these things are happening. And so the Federal Reserve and the world's central banks start to lower rates. And what happens then is that the bond prices went up like mad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really big time. However, we look at that and move forward a little bit, and we look at what happened was, well, they put out maybe too much money
Mm-hmm.
and lowered rates maybe too long. And now we're having to raise rates. So if you look at the second teeter-totter, when interest rates go up, the bond prices go down. And so that's what happened in 2022. And matter of fact, 2022, if you look at, I saw a really interesting article. If you look at the 10-year Treasury, for example, the price of the 10-year Treasury dropped roughly 24% for the year because the interest rates went from basically zero up to around 4%, a little bit less. And so the price dropped a lot. And it turned out to be the worst year for the 10-year Treasury in terms of price movement since 1788. That's pretty significant. And so that's why you kind of need to understand that relationship. There's single issue bonds where if you bought them at par value at like $1,000, and even though the price can change as interest rates are changing, if you hold on to them till maturity, you get your $1,000 back. There's short-term T-bills, which don't even pay an interest. They basically just grow to a certain value that equals the amount of interest. And there's a lot of different ways that bonds work. If you have an ETF with bonds in it, you might see more drop in the price than you're seeing increase in the yield. I mean, that's a good example of the 10-year. If you look at that second teeter-totter, interest rates went from, just make it easy, from 0 to 4%, right? And the bond price dropped 24% from highest to lowest, right? So that's why the price of bonds are still pretty important. Long term, the price stabilizes and, the interest rate comes up and what have you. So, but there's an inverse relationship between interest rates that are currently out there and the price of a bond. And there's a reason for that. It has to do with basically all the older bonds resetting to the same yield as the newer bonds. And again, that's maybe a little bit more complex than you want to know. on this type of question. But nonetheless, a very important component of how this works. And so one of the things we're seeing right now, in my opinion, is we're starting to see bonds maybe bottoming out, starting to find some bottom, because now there's some expectations that although interest rates might go up a little bit more, they're not going to maybe go up a lot more. And the expectation is that maybe even in the second half of the year, they have to lower rates a little bit just because they need to support an economy that got a little bit too soft. And so, that's where we're starting to, and we actually purchased, a big chunk of our bond holdings in mid-December. A little early, it dropped a bit, but now it's all come back. And so I think that, the bonds will be the first thing to turn around here. If there's going to be a turnaround, it'll happen in the bond market first.
Yeah, and one thing to remember with once a bond is issued, there's really nothing that can change other than how much you can trade it for.
Yeah.
You can't really change that interest rate, so that's
Right.
fixed. So the way
Yeah.
they equalize it to current rates is they move up and down the price.
Yeah, exactly. The coupon rate, if you buy at 4%, is 4%. Now the value can drop or gain or drop because new bonds are coming out at higher or lower interest rates, and that's kind of how it works. It readjusts itself. All right, good. All right, what else do we have for question?
I got an end of year raise, and I want to know how I should budget the extra money. I'm in my mid 50s, if that helps.
Mid-50s, end-of-year raise, how do I budget that? Yeah, so there's basically, there's kind of 4 places it can go pretty easy. First of all, you can spend it, right?
Yep.
That's obvious. And secondly, it's just kind of the 3 different categories of where money can go, right? So basically tax-deferred money, like a regular 401k or IRA, tax free, like a Roth IRA or Roth 401k, or taxable account, right? And that one, whenever you make a change, you have to put it on tax return. Dividends and gains are taxable when they happen that year, that kind of thing. And I guess for me, if I'm in that position, I've got to first determine if I'm going to save it or spend it. That's the first Y in the road. And obviously, if you're in the mid-50s, got to consider saving some of that. Just because it is going to be, it takes a lot of money to have a successful retirement. It really does, and way more than what people probably think, especially to make sure you've got enough buffer for these bad markets and all those things. So saving some would be important. So then where do you save it? Well, obviously one thing that's definite, that comes up all the time, is your company matching on your 401k contribution? And if they are you putting in enough to get the full match?
Yeah, you don't want to leave free money on the table.
No, well, it's 100% rate of return. So if you can put another, 1% in and they're going to match that, you just got 100% rate of return guaranteed from the company. And then any growth thereafter that you get, is
Just
now
compounding off that.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. But let's assume that you've already done that, right? You're asking this question, so you're obviously financially savvy, and thinking about things. So you've got your match. Then it's a matter, here's something that I think is important to take a look at. Take a look at those 3 buckets: tax-deferred, tax-free, and taxable. I would like to head into retirement with at least some form of balance across there. And what we see is that tax-deferred tends to be dominant.
Yeah.
And there's so much money. Somebody has $4 million and $3.5 million of it or more is in tax deferred. Yeah, basically a 401k, the buildup that they had and the matches that came through. And then they don't have any other money outside. Outside they maybe got their home, okay, but unless they move or borrow against it, they can't use that equity. And they don't have any taxable money to use to spend, so they're constantly having to pull money out of this tax deferred, and that tax-wise is a problem. And of course, then you get to require minimum distributions, and things can really get sideways on you. So I would look at trying to balance those buckets to a certain degree, especially saving potentially some money consistently. Matter of fact, that'd be my plan from the get-go, into taxable accounts, just to make sure I have some money. because there are some tax advantages to taxable accounts. I don't have to pay any tax if I just hold on to it. Maybe I get a dividend or something I have to pay tax on. And then capital gains tax is currently lower than ordinary income tax. So if I pull money out of my old 401k, I'm going to pay ordinary income. I can pay less tax in most cases by pulling money out of a appreciated asset in a taxable account. So, because that is a hole we see very, very often, is that people don't have enough money in the taxable area. So, not knowing from the question where that person is, look at those 3 buckets.
Yeah, and having a financial plan would be really helpful in this question, because you need to know, what are my goals, what are my priorities. If I want to retire earlier, maybe I want to be saving the majority of this money. But if I'm on track for my retirement and I'm happy with what age I'm retiring, maybe I could spend more of this money on myself, my family.
Yeah, the plan will guide you. Should I be doing Roth conversions? Should I be adding to a Roth? Should I be adding to my 401k? Should I be adding to taxable? What's the difference? How does it work? My probability of success, how does it change depending on where I put that money? These are all questions that you can ask the software and get back a reasonable answer. I don't know how anybody figures any of this stuff out without the software personally. Most people are probably guessing. And so, that's what we do, obviously, is that process and using very, very powerful software that really helps with these types of decisions too. But it's a good question. It's something, because most people don't even ask that question. They just think, oh, great, I
got some extra money.
I can get that new car or whatever it is that they want to spend money on, and that's the American way. Our savings rate is not that great here altogether. So I'm glad that somebody's asking about that.
So what is the deadline for contributions to a Roth IRA?
So Roth IRA, okay, so true with the regular IRA also, actually. And you have until you file your taxes, and they keep changing the date. We looked it up. It's April. It looks like it's April 18th.
Yeah.
For this year. I think it was the 17th.
It was 18th for 2022.
2022. So, 2022 filing for last year's tax returns is April 18th this year. Yeah, anyway. So here's the weird thing. You can actually make a contribution to your Roth IRA in 2023 for 2022 up until the tax filing date.
Yeah. And you need to, when you do this, you should make sure that you're declaring for 2022 and not 2023. Most custodians or any kind of brokerage should ask you this question, but if they don't, make sure you clarify that to them.
Yeah, because if I'm in March of 2023 and I want to make a contribution to my 2022 contribution, if I'm not careful, if I make that contribution and don't follow up or don't make sure that they understand it's for 2022, they might code it as 2023. And you're better off doing it for 2022, because then that leaves you 2023 to do another one if you can, right?
Yeah, it gives you more flexibility.
It gives you more flexibility. Maybe you don't have enough money to do it in 2023. Who knows? But nonetheless, you want to code it for last year, assuming you haven't already made one last year, which is a whole other case. You can't make 2.
Or you can make multiple contributions, but you can't go over the limit.
You can't go over the limit. That's better wording. Yeah, exactly. So, but it's not rocket science. It's not that hard. We don't see many mistakes here. Once in a while, somebody gets a wrong coding on their contribution. You just want to make sure that's correct. It's not that difficult. A lot of these custodians kind of understand that prior to April 18th in this case, there's a chance that could be 2022 contributions. Once you get past that point, they probably don't have to ask anymore, because you can only contribute for 2023 in say June. If you're putting your money in at that point in time. So, we get kind of a lot of people coming in right at the end, with contributions for their IRAs and whatnot. So, good question. All right. Well, that's a show. We're off for a couple weeks. We managed to get through this one without too many errors. Pretty good. This is a live show. Sometimes I think it'd be fun to watch it just to see if we mess up. It's been pretty good so far. We really enjoy it. I appreciate everybody watching very much so. And again, if you want to, ask a question for the next show, feel free to send it in during the week to Ask Tom at talkmoneywithtom.com, and we will try to answer that for you. We can, it's great if you send them early. We can do some work and try to find, we have a lot of nice charts that we find. So, if you're looking to kind of increase your education in the areas that we're talking about here, asset management, retirement planning, and tax planning, those are the things we focus on this channel. We're really trying, it's free. You can subscribe to the channel so you can find it easy again. And if you like to get notified when we send new stuff on there, hit the bell button. Feel free to hunt around in there and see if you can find something that might help you have a better retirement. And of course, you can meet with Ethan and I. You go to the website and hit the book appointment button up in the corner. Pick a 30-minute video or phone time to meet with us. And thank you very much for coming today. Really looking forward to next week. Send in your questions. We'd really like to answer those next week. Thank you very much.